Hey, I'm Ron Drodos from keyboardimprov.com, and welcome to our journey through the real book number 244, which is My Favorite Things. I almost said John Coltrane's My Favorite Things, because that's basically what it is in the real book, but it's Rodger's and Hammerstein's My Favorite Things, which was made into a jazz classic by John Coltrane. So as we're doing with all these online jazz piano lessons, we're trying to reach a place of understanding, both about these tunes in their historical context, but also how we can learn them and how we can play them. And those are the lessons that I want to pass on here that I got from people like Billy Taylor, Harold Danko, a great pianist, played with Chet Baker. You know, they encouraged me to learn about the tunes and their place in history and how we can play them. You know, and in addition to learning the chords, which are basically here, and the melodies and all that. So we want to understand the tunes as best we can and in relation to our own musical development. So why is My Favorite Things in the real book, right? It's you know, basically kind of known these days as a children's song, wonderful song from The Sound of Music, you know, raindrops on roses and moon, right? It's a waltz. You know, beautiful, beautiful, catchy song. Why is John Coltrane playing it? You know, why do you listen to John Coltrane and you hear... How did he get to that from... Well, that's what we're going to do. We're going to connect the dots so you can understand how to play it. And then you can pick any way you want to play it. So think about this. This was released by Coltrane in 1961. And I believe the name of the album was My Favorite Things. I've always had it on a Live from Birdland. I think the original, you can check that out, was My Favorite Things. But it's also Live from Birdland, which was a great version with Eric Dolphy on flute too. And McCoy Tyner on piano, obviously. So My Favorite Things in 1961. Okay, 1961, John Coltrane. He had sort of started his career with the Miles Davis group and other groups, and even as a leader, little mid-50s, later on, mid to late 50s, recording basically standard tunes, which were a lot of Broadway show tunes, right? You know, If I Were a Bell, Miles Davis, a Broadway tune. I Could Write a Book, a Rodgers and Hart tune. This is Rodgers and Hammerstein. So Richard Rodgers wrote some of these standards. My Funny Valentine with Miles. That was a Broadway show tune by Richard Rodgers and Lorenz Hart, you know, from the 30s. Pal Joey, Broadway musical. So Coltrane, like most of the other musicians, jazz musicians, had been playing a lot of Broadway and movie musical tunes. Those are what we now know as standards, right? Jazz standards. So he had gotten away from that, starting, you know, around the late 58, 59, 60. He had played with Thelonious Monk, doing mostly, if not all, Monk tunes. Miles had moved on to, they were still playing a lot of the show tunes on some albums, like Someday My Prince Will Come and In Concert, but some of the other albums, tongue twister, were like Kind of Blue, which were original tunes by members of the group. Coltrane had moved in that direction largely. He released albums like Giant Steps and Blue Train, where he was writing the tunes for them. And then he was getting into more modal music, where you play over one chord forever, and he can superimpose whatever harmonies he wants. But it's a little easier for the rhythm section than Giant Steps, where they're like, oh my goodness, what are these chords? So Coltrane could do that, but it's hard for the rhythm sections. So I think it was Miles who apparently recommended that he keep it easy for the rhythm section, have them play modally, and he could do whatever he wanted on top. So that affects how we play this tune, knowing this. So by 1961, though, he hadn't had, you know, wanted a kind of a hit, right? You could still get a hit instrumental jazz recording in the late 50s and very early 60s. Billy Taylor told me that. So they would look for these tunes that might be hits. So the Broadway musical, which was later made into a movie in 65, but in 1959, The Sound of Music opened on Broadway, and it was a huge hit. And The Sound of Music was a tune that people knew. So Coltrane saw this apparently as a way to get the best of both worlds. He could play a tune that everybody already loved, right? Like he had been doing a few years before, but he could treat it modally because it's in E minor. And the first four measures here, E minor 7, F sharp minor 7, you know, okay, I could do it all over kind of an E pedal tone down here. Don't even have to solo over the chords of the tune. They kind of do. They kind of, what would eventually happen is Coltrane's version would stay on E minor for a while, and then it would be like a little verbal, maybe like a visual cue. He'd say, okay, here we go, and the rhythm section would go to the chorus, and they'd sort of take each section out like that. But the point is that he could mix the older way of playing a tune that came from Broadway and that might sell records and people would really like, and also play in his current style at the time in 1961, which was a little edgier, farther out. So it was like the best of both worlds for him. That's a point that I think is missed on a lot of people, because you see this version, which is very much like the Broadway show, and you're like, wait a minute, but Coltrane did it so differently. How do I find my way? So we can pick anywhere on that spectrum we want. We can treat this like a nice jazz waltz, just like an older one, like Someday My Prince Will Come, you know. So, like Bill Evans might play or something, or Alice in Wonderland. So, a nice jazz waltz. We could treat it like that and solo on it like that. Treating it like a nice jazz waltz. Or we could treat it modally, however that means to us, whether it's McCoy Tyner playing an open fifth and then bouncing around with the quartal voicings, fourths, or playing however we want, or mixing it up, playing these changes, but kind of playing in that style. So we can either play it as a traditional jazz waltz over here, or modally 60s jazz, or somewhere in between, sort of combine both approaches. I kind of like somewhere over here for myself, playing it as a jazz waltz with the chord changes, but bringing a little bit of that kind of feel into it. I don't like throwing it all out, at least for me. See how you feel about it. Try the different approaches, and definitely listen to Coltrane play it. So here we go. It's a wonderful tune, and that gives you a nice overview on different approaches. Let's see what happens here. Ooh, that's fun. It's fun to do that. And, you know, just thinking about the tune, getting into the sound. I'm not comparing myself to Coltrane or McCoy, Tyner or anybody else. That's a way that we hold ourselves back by saying, oh no, this isn't as good as so-and-so. We just play. And then often it turns out wonderful, right? So you can find your own approach to a tune like this. And one of the fun things is that you see how Coltrane kind of made it a little modal. We can make it modal with our own techniques or our own kind of groove, not necessarily playing it as maybe, I don't know if aggressive is the right word, but energetically, or we can sort of bring some of the charm back from the original into this jazz waltz version, similar to like how Bill Evans might play it, for instance, maybe even Herbie. And then take it from there and create our own version of it. That's really what I'm getting at here. That's the big lesson here, how we can take this understanding and create our own versions of tunes, and that can grow throughout the years. So hey, thanks for joining me here. Sign up for my video course if you're interested in hundreds of lessons. I've got beginning, intermediate, advanced jazz, blues, rock, everything in between to help you get fluent at your improvising. That's the main goal for you. Become fluent, and then you can just play anything. I appreciate you being here, joining me here. Next time we go towards My Foolish Heart. Speaking of Bill Evans before, I didn't know that was coming up, coincidence. So again, thanks, and always remember, enjoy the journey and let the music flow.